The esteemed senator from Essex, Senator Gill.
Senator Rice stood up, but I'll take that. For more than 8 years, I've been the sponsor of legislation calling for a special session of the legislature to specifically tackle our state's long-standing struggle with high property taxes. I sponsored this legislation because a special session was a process that could provide meaningful tax reform. I had faith that we would do what we have been constitutionally charged to do. I had no idea that we would be in a process like this. Here, at the 11th hour, at what is supposed to be the eve of reform, a so-called historic moment after having missed a self-imposed deadline, we are now forced into a position of voting for legislation that is alleged to provide the reform that the people of this state has desperately longed for. We stand here today on the precipice of failure because, in my opinion, this bill is unconstitutional in 2 ways. First of all, the rebates for seniors and disabled were done as a part of a constitutional amendment. And I do not think that constitutionally this body has the power to extend rebates under any other conditions except those that are contained within the parameters of the amendment. Secondly, I feel that this bill is unconstitutional because it's a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. We're here talking about tax credits. And the tax credits are not provided for people over a certain salary without any rational basis. So that in some of our communities, where 2 people working make more than $250,000, simply because they make $250,000, they will receive no tax credit. That, to me, is such a fundamental violation of the Equal Protection Clause. And further, we promised 20% reduction off of your tax bill under 100,000 and the increase thereof. But we know that is not 20% of your tax bill. It's only 20% if you're in the income category of the first 10,000. So that what was promised is in fact not what is delivered. And perhaps most importantly, we have no money to pay for this past 2008. No money. The 4% cap, if you examine it, is virtually nullified by the waivers and exemptions for health, safety, and welfare. That, as we know, even when we litigate, can include almost anything. But perhaps what is most disturbing is that we don't even know the numbers to determine how this bill will impact on our individual districts. This is not the 20% reduction in property taxes that was promised and what the public was led to believe. Property tax reform is not something that can be tackled in a piecemeal fashion. It must be dealt with comprehensively, and it is unequivocal that a comprehensive approach is not being taken place in this chamber today. Where is the school funding formula? We don't even have a school funding formula to see if what we are going to give in rebate credit will be negated by the school funding formula. We have not addressed nor tackled state government spending, which we know is crucial to property tax reform. This is not reform because there is no change in our property tax system. This bill is just an expanded rebate program for which we have insufficient means to finance on a long-term basis. There is no realizable, recurring source of revenues to sustain this tax credit rebate beyond 2008. In plain language, we don't have the money to pay for this. The people deserve better than this. In fact, they were promised more than this, much more. There seems to be the idea that people will be happy if you just give them anything. The underlying assumption is that people are so financially strapped that they will accept anything we give. If we were selling this tax package as a product, we would be in violation of the Consumer Fraud Act. The public's voice has been virtually removed from this process, and I think that for me this is critically important. By having every bill go straight to the Senate floor without reference to committee. As we know, it's in the committee meetings that the public is allowed to participate in the legislative process by reviewing, analyzing, and commenting on any proposed legislation. While it was permissible for the public to comment during hearings for proposed recommendations, and we know the recommendations are not what ended up in the legislation in that form, we closed the State House doors to the public when it came to the proposed legislation. Not one bill during this special session has gone through the normal legislative process of being referred to the appropriate committee for review and public comment. In fact, we had more hearings and debate on my bill for needle exchange than we have on all of these tax bills combined. But we did not stumble into this process. Sadly, it was intended. The people deserve real reform, not rebates and gimmicks. We have children in need of better educational resources. We have working families who are struggling to attain affordable housing. We have seniors who spent a lifetime securing their homes in which they now live, and those who can barely afford to live in them because of the highest taxes in the nation. We are the wealthiest state in the nation, but we cannot care for our poor. As senators, we are better than this process that has been carved out. I fear that this is a veiled attempt to set the stage for the sale of state assets. And if asset modernization fails after we have passed this legislation, then we have placed the state in even more dire circumstances. At the very least, we didn't come here to fool the people. This cannot be our mission. It seems that the only serious way to address this issue of tax reform, and I thought I would never take this position, is to turn it over to the people through a constitutional convention so they can have the power to decide their future and the future of generations to come. And for these reasons, I will not be able to support this legislation.
Thank you, Senator Gill. Senator